cybersecurity and risk management. Again, outside of this slide, I would like to basically just spend a minute. Seriously, what does anyone, like, what do you think when you hear of cybersecurity, risk management, protection, security, information security, all of those things, all of those mumbo jumbos around IT security, what first comes to mind? You can unmute.
Paperwork.
I'm sorry?
Paperwork.
Okay, I think the idea of saying remove your mic is going to turn a bit chaotic. Feel free to put it in the chat if you prefer, but I'm also listening. We can be chaotic for the minute. Business requirements versus cybersecurity requirements, okay? I don't know, is there a difference to that? One could say it's the same. Oh, someone said CIA, I hope not the agency. Yeah, but I agree, confidentiality, integrity, and availability is always something associated with that, okay?
Governance.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
Governance.
Yeah, governance is definitely one. RMF is just risk management, but frameworks. NIST 800-53, okay, I agree. NIST is truly driving a lot of, it's having a lot of influence when it comes to cybersecurity risk management, but not necessarily, I wouldn't tie basically cybersecurity as NIST 800-53, but okay. Achieving the maximum security and meeting the business objectives. Who is this? No worries. Okay. Okay, just one word that I will change there, and I absolutely love that. That is achieving the maximum security and meeting the business objectives. I love that. I will just remove the word maximum security in there, and something along the lines of helping organizations achieve the business objectives or adding value. But yes, I 100% that. Economic impact. Okay, dealing with, I like how Greg started with dealing because no way is a headache. Okay, all good references, I agree. Hopefully, on the bright side, we have this, we are recording it. We'll visit it after the, by the end of the class and see how everybody say it. The infrastructure for a company. Okay, I mean, all of these make sense. Some are more, some are better, but nothing is that terrible here. But I absolutely agree with all of you. So we, trying to get my slide to work. Perfect. So without truly reading from the slide, everybody kind of can make a meaning to this entire thing, right? We always talk about security. Security means different thing to different people. Call it what is being written in there. Some think of it from a danger perspective, some think of it from a harming perspective. I mean, there's always just this connotation with security has to do with something negative. The goal of this class is to actually embrace it, not necessarily see it as a negative thing. And for some reason, whenever, I mean, for some of you that are actually in the executive role as well as the senior management role, you already know, like whenever you start hearing of, oh, security here, cybersecurity, all of this risk whatsoever, you instantly just feel like it's a place where you lose money, not necessarily generate money, right? Unless the company's objective is actually creating tool and cybersecurity resources. Most organizations, you find them try easily making that assumption of security truly means a negative thing, but it doesn't have to, right? So our goal here is also to kind of change that organizational focus, but first by changing our mindset into what security means. So is there anyone, please feel free to put in the chat, is there anyone who disagree with any of the definitions here? I know it's the generic definition, but once we agree on this, then we'll go into what exactly does that mean. Again, I'm not gonna read from the slide, but everybody can associate security to either CIA because it's just become, oh, we are looking at the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that. Yes, again, what about privacy? Privacy is still a part of it, When you start talking about privacy, you're not talking about information, you're talking about data, you're talking about the state of something being private. However, in as much as people try to make privacy and security synonymous, it's actually not. It isn't, because security doesn't translate to privacy. While privacy can be a subset of security, right? So to make something private, one can claim that they have to secure something, but not necessarily. Saying risk IT framework. Okay, we are going to touch on that. But again, when you talk of framework, you're talking about a process of how you are implementing things, right? So we have this defined approach of handling it. But before we get into handling it exactly, there is a huge need to change how we view it. Do we always have to see security as a negative thing? Not really, because I always use this analogy of the half full, half empty glass cup, where you can choose to see, okay, it's half empty, or you can choose to see the other side, like, okay, it's half full. When we change our mindset from security to seeing it more as a danger, can we look at it from a perspective of what happens if we have security in place? What do we feel if we feel secure? What does that translate? Safety, okay. It could be we are creating a safe environment. It could also be um, there is no danger, right? So hence this, when you think of we are creating safety, it also applies to what security is, and that is part of risk management. Why do you say it's part of risk management? Risk is an element of security, right? The existence and presence of risk is what results into a state of being unsecure. So finding ways to manage that risk does not necessarily doesn't have to be mitigating the risk, but managing the risk, which is responding to the risk, creates a sense of safety. Now, when we feel safe, or an organization feels safe, it adds value to that, right? Which we will talk about that again. Now, we do not have to read the slide, but what is risk, right? It could be a probability of an event. It could be the consequence and its consequences, right? But there are elements of risk, which we're also going to talk about later. What things have to be in place for a risk to present itself, or especially around impact, vulnerability, all of those things. We would talk about it. But one thing we can all agree on is that we always see risk as an adverse event, right? Something that truly, truly kind of negatively impacts us. It could be that, yes, a risk exists, but it doesn't impact us. Then, sorry, if a vulnerability exists, but it doesn't necessarily impact us, we don't really see it as a risk. So yes, thank you, Alicia. We do have the likelihood of occurrence. But at the same time, all of these things must come together and it must have an impact for it to translate into a risk. So beyond that, once we have a risk in place, so yes, a likelihood of a vulnerability is going to happen. We have that as high. We identify like, oh, this vulnerability is truly going to impact us. Again, we all know that, so we have a risk. How do we handle it? What do we do? That action that we take to actually make ourselves feel safe or create that safety net, what is that? That is when we are responding to the risk. So not necessarily mitigation. Mitigation could be, thank you very much, Rebecca. Yes, I agree with risk management, but mitigation means alleviating the risk, eradicating the risk, taking control, eliminating the risk. But sometimes we actually don't mitigate the risk. We actually accept the risk. We can transfer the risk. So we will talk about all of these things in detail. So again, in this class, you would find that we are being nitpicky and truly staying on course with those terminologies. There are words that have been diluted in the outside world around risk mitigation is more synonymous now with risk management, but it's actually not true. When you eliminate a risk, you can claim that it's been mitigated or something, or if you apply a control or something like that. But when you transfer a risk, it is not. Treatment, I agree, is synonymous with response. That I agree. Someone added controls. Controls result in you choose to respond to the risk from mitigation perspective or apply some sort of a treatment, right? Now, all of that process, how you choose to respond, how you choose to act, could be how we are deciding to manage that risk. Is there anyone who disagrees? Someone says, would it be true that we understand the threat or the adversarial access so we can cost effectively mitigate the risk? Yes, absolutely. But this all comes down, which we'll talk about in detail as part of chapter 4, I believe, that is around the IT risk response or something like that. But at this stage, we are even talking about how do we identify that there is a risk? What elements needs to be in place that shows like, yes, there is an existing risk. Yes, we touched about that, Michelle. We did talk about impact, that it has to impact us. We talk about the likelihood. I can't remember who mentioned, oh, Alicia did mention the likelihood of occurrence. We, all of these elements, that is this chapter. Sorry, the first chapter we are going to get into actually around the IT risk identification. Stephanie mentioned assessment. Assessment usually comes after you have responded to the risk and now you're assessing it to see if truly the response is applicable. So yeah, all of these terminologies, but it's really important for us to actually understand the differences, especially as risk professionals. It is vital and key for us to use it in the right context. There is one of the ISACA glossary that I really love. I believe if you have the book, it contains within the book. If you don't, you can Google it online or we can help you actually pull it out, but it's really exhaustive around all of these terminologies that are used. And it clearly, in a simple manner, explain the differences. It's really good. I also like the one from Nist, but it's more coined towards the government terminologies around naming convention like assessors instead of auditors, even though there is a little slight difference there, but we will all touch upon that. Okay, so coming back into the this. So we know what risk is. How we decide to respond, assess it, whatsoever, all of those steps we are taking either to reduce it, transfer it, or whatsoever, the actions we are taking towards that risk could all be bundled under the management, right? That is, we are managing the risk. Even if you choose not to respond to the risk, it's a decision not to actually respond to it. As such, it's part of the managing the risk. Now, the process of managing the risk, we cannot decide to leave it to just, when it comes to an organization, taking a step back here, when it comes to an organization, each organization will have to define how they choose to manage their risk. In a place like the government, it could be centralized where the government has a single tone of how things should be managed. But at the same time, when you start going down, you realize every organization will have to define how they choose to manage the risk based on their mission and objectives. Let me give you a quick example here. When you take a place like an example, let's take Walmart, for example, their online websites, right? Their online website, as well as trying to identify another side. And then maybe let's take a banking sector, for example. Yeah, someone did say risk appetite. I'm trying to avoid those words because I don't want to confuse people at this stage, but we'll talk about it in the details. But yeah, let's take these two examples. We have Walmart, their normal website. And then we have another bank, let's say Wells Fargo, their websites, right? How Walmart will actually address risk relating to their, let's identify like, okay, there is a chance of having a risk of some downtime, right? Maybe one of them needs to go down. The impact that it will have on Walmart website will completely be different with that of the bank. It's possible for a banking website to go down for just a minute with less impact, whereas that of Walmart, the minute it goes, be it Walmart or Amazon, the minute it goes down, in a minute, they could actually lose billions of dollars because people are no longer ordering. any product. Now, how Walmart will choose to address that and how the bank will choose to address it could be completely different. Walmart could decide, like, you know what, whatever happens, let it have a different impact on us, but the website must be up. That is their tolerance towards that risk. It has to be up, irrespective of what's going to happen. Whereas on the banking sector, they will think like, whatever is going to happen, we want it to go down first because we are not going to risk someone gaining access, illegitimate access, such that they can transfer other people's fund. So how organizations tend to respond to risk is fully dependent upon the organization's mission and objectives. If this sounds a bit confusing, it's okay. It's still the introductory part. We will have a deep down of this in detail as we go forward in the class. But once an organization's identified the risk, how they manage the risk and whatsoever, there is a huge part of the accountability. And we will talk in detail around what is the difference between responsibility and accountability later in the class. But organizations are accountable, right? So who is accountable for all of those things? Senior management. Again, each organization, from an organizational perspective, when you look at it, manager risk, the risk is to what? Anybody can tell me, oh, to their products, to the people, to whatsoever, but we will call all of that assets. Assets is not necessarily only a product that a company is producing or the resources that are being used within the company or organization. It's actually also, it's not even it's actually the people, the employees, everybody, the building, everything could be classified as an asset. Anything that allows the organization to achieve its objectives could be classified as an asset. Part of governance has to do with that, setting the tone, the policies, and everything. Now, I did cross out the protection of assets. It's not like it is wrong. No, it's actually true. Organizations, by having security mechanisms, when you see a security guard, the first thing you think is, oh, this organization is actually protecting its building, or maybe protecting the building from someone going in. Yes, I agree to that. But for the sake of this class, as a risk professional, right? When you go, you can actually see it instead as an added value. You can choose to see it as, oh, you know what? By having a security guard in front of the bank is actually protecting itself, maybe from some unwanted attention or whatsoever. Or you can choose to see as the bank is actually putting these security mechanisms in place so that it adds its value, maybe add more value to its customers, to itself, because the customers that will come in, they will feel more safe. Let me give you another example. Let's think of a bad neighborhood. Randomly, I know. Let's think of a bad neighborhood. You go into a bad neighborhood, you have a house in there, you can decide to put a barbed wire whatsoever, fence your house. You can choose to see it as, you know what? I am protecting my house from influences of the bad neighborhood so people do not come in and steal or whatsoever. You can choose to see it that way, or you can decide to see it more as, oh, I'm actually adding value to my house because it increases my sense of safety. It increases my home value actually as well. There are two sides to the coin. How you choose to see it is up to you, but the truth is, from a risk management perspective, as well as for us as security professional, we always want to see security and risk management from an added value perspective. Why do I say that? Because unless you start seeing how, as a risk professional, you're adding value to the organization, you will face 3 or more things. One of those is convincing non-security and non-risk professional folks that what you are doing is meaningful. If you can't show where there is value in what you're doing, it becomes challenging. To the executives, to those of you that are already executives and senior managers, you will be laughing and saying, like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Why is he telling me something I already know? That's the truth. Please, I need one of you to just go ahead and comment if you disagree with me. But yeah, you will find it challenging to actually convince anyone or any organization if you can't identify how what you are doing adds value to that same organization's objectives. That's one. Second, you would find yourself, if you are more into like software engineering, all of these engineering roles, if you continuously focus on just the protection mechanisms, you will find that you continuously build products that are focused on protection, not necessarily on usability. I absolutely agree with everyone that, oh, cybersecurity is important. I mean, come on, it's a PhD class in cybersecurity. I'm a cybersecurity person. But the absolute truth is when we take things from IT, whatever mechanism and protection mechanism you're implementing, the goal is not to make the product the most secure, but rather to make the product usable in a secure manner. There is a clear difference with that. So ignoring the board, ignoring whatsoever, as an engineer building a product, if I don't care if you're a network engineer, infrastructure engineer, application developer, or whatsoever, if you're implementing protection mechanisms and you continuously try to see it more from the perspective of protecting that tool, you would find eventually that you are starting to build products that are becoming hard to use. They are overly focused on protection, but they are not usable. I'll give you another example. If today we all have iPhones, right? If Apple decide like, you know what, the only way for anyone to access their device, we don't care, we're just going to protect it the most secured way. So for anyone to access their device, they have to use their thumbprint, some retina eye scan, and a combination of whatsoever. I get it. It makes it awesome when it comes to security. But consumers, they will start getting pissed. Why do I have to use my thumbprint plus eye scan plus my other mechanism just to access my phone? Not everybody is in the business of keeping the most important thing on their phone. To some, there are people that actually, I don't care, maybe if my phone, I lost it because I don't have anything of value into it. Some, it's a big deal. So keeping in mind that the logical security mechanisms doesn't translate to you not being able to lose your phone or something like that. So unless the organization, like say Apple, decide to provide different mechanisms in place that allows you to calibrate the protection to your own taste, you will find that there is, oh, perfect. Jacobs even finished it. He said, there will always be a tug of war between security and accessibility. The key here is, if you want to easily navigate that and find that balance, it is of paramount importance to understand how the protections you're adding adds value. I used to be an engineer as well. One of the major problems we tend to have as full-blown engineers is we tend to think that technical implementation is the overall thing. And I'm here to tell you, the whole IT space, I don't care what you think of IT. IT is not the thing. IT is only a tool meant to achieve something. Name anything. Yes, here I am making that claim. Tell me anything that you think IT is trying to achieve on its own, that technology is not serving as a tool to complement something. That is not. You take the health sector. IT is trying to maybe optimize the processes so people can have a better life, or maybe doctors are able to find the best cure or whatsoever. You take farming. Yeah, if you plug in IT into that, it's still serving as a tool. We are here. We are basically now in a class, but remotely, leveraging Zoom and different tools. But the technology is not the main thing. The main thing is the ability to have this session, have the teaching capacity, do the transfer of knowledge, all of those things. So what technology is doing is actually helping us achieve that. As such, we cannot make technology the number one thing, but rather it has to be calibrated to fit what we are trying to achieve. Again, imagine if we decide now to say, the Zoom session for this class, you have to jump through 5, 6, 7 security mechanisms before you're able to join the class. It defeats the purpose, because The goal of the class is to make it easy, to make the transfer of knowledge easily accessible. I don't see any risk in actually, there could be, but I wouldn't say that any that I said scratch that. I would say I don't see much impact if someone who is not enrolled in this class decide to dial into this Zoom session and listen. I don't see much impact other than maybe knowing who and who is in the class. As such, having those so many controls and many password mechanisms in place just to ensure people are unable to access it doesn't make sense to me. But there's another thing. I also wouldn't want Zoom to not be encrypting the traffic as we are exchanging these information. Why? Because someone can actually infiltrate in between our communication, serve as some sort of a middleware, either some person in the middle attack, and they will be able to deduce more information beyond the class content. It could be the device we're using. It could be any type of traffic or network exchange that is happening, right? As such, I wouldn't want to use Zoom if it doesn't encrypt while in transit. So there are different approaches to it, but it's of paramount importance that we see security as something that adds value, not necessarily just as a protection mechanism. I'll shut up here and see if catch up on the charts. Okay. Also, are the controls cost effective? Yeah, that's definitely true around cost and versus benefit. We will talk about that, but I 100% agree with you. There is no point buying an antivirus software that is worth $5,000 to protect a system of $100 unless that system contains information that is more than $5,000. So yes, I agree to that. Perfect, that's the right terminology. Adequate security. You put security mechanisms based on how it applies to you. Yes, you can buy a $50 laptop and literally put security technologies that are worth $100,000 if that $50 laptop contains information of value that is beyond the mechanisms that you put. Agreed. Okay. Again, another thing is around the same topic. Seeing it from a value perspective allows you to actually serve the organization in the best manner, meaning you are going in there with a mindset of not just selling our security related tools, but actually understanding the organization's objective and helping them achieve that. Some organizations' objective could be making profit, and as such, you're able to help them make more profit by adding security mechanisms, not creating another channel where they burn more money without any value. Governance principles, right? All of these terminologies, but it's just around making sure we align everything around security with the organization's objectives. Everything we just finished talking about, making sure that all the different departments whatsoever are all working towards the same goal. What is that goal? What is the strategy? What is the mission? What is the objective? These are all things we can ask ourselves. Things like, are we doing things the right way? Again, we are adding all of these security mechanisms on a device, but do we have to do it? Is it the right way to do it? The right way, not from the implementation perspective, but are we doing things like cost-benefit analysis? You know, all of these different analysis that needs to come into the picture before we make those decisions. Are we doing them? Are we doing them the right way? That's the same thing, right? Now, are we getting them done well? Especially like around controls. You can implement controls, but you are not implementing it the right way. It might end up, costing you more. You can decide to actually implement a security control, but if you do not implement it the right way, it ends up becoming even more disastrous, right? So finally, are we getting any benefit out of what we are trying to do? Why do we highlight the word benefit there? You think of benefit, you think of value. These are all things that we are trying to achieve. Now, protection. So, okay, I could say I agree with you, more like I understand where you're coming from, but I disagree with you. No, I'm not in the cybersecurity field to protect organizations. No, I'm in the field to actually add value to the organization. You know what? Off topic a little bit. It makes me even feel good. I feel like, I'm not just protecting. No, who am I protecting? I'm adding value. I'm also a vital part of the organization. Any profit they make, I contributed to that, right? Any organization that achieves something, I actually help them achieve that. So as such, we're going to change it from a positive viewpoint. Benefits to me means adding value, and it's all part of governance, right? Now, why do we make reference to governance? Every time you hear that part of governance, there are two sides to that. There is the management and you hear the governance, right? But what is the difference? Looking for people in the chat to tell me. You will find a lot of people in the executive understanding what governance means, and people within the managerial band understanding what management means, and most people that are on the lower bands, you find them, they do not relate to any of this. They just understand things from their perspective, right? So I'll give a couple of examples. Starting with the much lower, you will find that, I apologize if I call you out. No, I'm just giving an example of a title. I don't mean your job is not valuable, but you'll find a sysadmin. If you're a sysadmin, again, please don't come after me. I'm just kidding. But you'll find a sysadmin that works within just the IT sector of any organization, making more decisions around truly what impacts things just from an IT perspective, right? So it could be the devices that everybody is using within the organization is still effective, it's still working as it should be, it's still achieving the organization's objective without the need to actually change anything, because there's like the security posture of it is still maintained. But it still doesn't stop that same sysadmin from saying like, hey, the new server is out, we gotta change this. But do we have to? No, we don't, because the same old one is actually maybe not impacting anything. From a negative viewpoint, it's still serving what it's intended to do. Just because a new one is out that doesn't help us move forward doesn't mean we just have to update it. But that same sysadmin that is more within the IT shop might not actually understand that decision. Why? Because they're not making a decision from a managerial perspective or even a governance perspective, but rather they're thinking of just the technology, putting more value and importance on just the technology, not the organization objectives. Again, you kind of move up a little bit to maybe like that same managerial band, you will find a manager, a senior manager, thinking more along the lines of, you know what, we need to have this, we need to spend dollars in this sector, we need to do this. And the executives and saying like, nope, we're not gonna spend any money in the IT shop, because our goal is not just to spend the money over there. Our goal is to actually prove to us stakeholders, our directors, our board, or whatsoever, that nope, we are able to minimize cost. And that same, especially the managerial band, one of the hardest, right? Because you're dealing with the executive at the upper, and then you're dealing with the analyst and everybody at the bottom. As such, you find yourself in this middle, middle hell, I would call it, where you're dealing with both sides. But then truly, you find it hard to relate with governance, because you don't also have to satisfy the stakeholders. You don't have to satisfy the board or whatsoever. And then you find like, why are we not deciding to spend dollars within the IT shop, even though we actually need to? Maybe because from a governance perspective, it doesn't make sense. Governance might even be thinking, you know what, as was, if anything is to happen, the IT shop is the first to go. No, COVID hits, we are losing money. Yeah, IT shop, well, maybe not COVID, because IT shop is now considered very vital to the organization, but could be like IT is the first to go. So that could be something at the managerial challenge that people find it hard to deal with. And then you go more into the governance. I do find one thing though, not because I find myself now in more on the managerial role, but you find people within the managerial kind of understanding both sides more on the, because they relate with the lower levels, they kind of understand that those pain points, and you find some within the some of them also understand things from the executive side, right? Because they are kind of that bridge between the two. But it's also a reason why it's kind of the hardest when it comes to dealing with people. At the executive level, you find that organizations are only focused on one thing and one thing only. That is, What action are they going to take? Any executive level, they are just thinking of what action am I going to take that will actually translate into value? And value at their viewpoint is the organization's mission, not only the objectives, but the mission in itself. Objectives could be different at the different stages of this organization. It could also be different at the different department of the organization. The objectives of the IT department could be just to keep the systems running. And then the objectives of the legal department is to ensure that there is no any legal issues related to the organization. But that at the governance, more executive, you find they are focused on what is the organization's mission and how are we achieving it. If the organization is in the business of making profits, that's the mission. So anything you have to go to them, it has to come from how does it translate to making profit. If they are in the business of making their stakeholders happy, that's the goal. So let's talk about national security. You take DoD, CIA, all of these places like national security agencies. What's their mission? Their mission is to keep the entire nation safe. So every single action that they need, and any executive will make at that level, it's more along how does it impact the nation? Does it open, or rather, does it expose the nation more, or does it secure the nation, you know? So that's how they see things. As such, consuming products, IT products, irrespective of how good it is, if it exposes the nation, it's not necessarily aligned with that agency's objective. I will introduce another thing here, which we are going to be talking a lot. Please don't come after me. Just kidding, but let's take 5G for example. Like it or not, the US was left behind. China was ahead of the US when it comes to 5G. But should the US implement 5G that is from China? I can understand it if a lot of these national security agencies said no, because why? Irrespective of the advancement that it will bring, it also exposes the nation's maybe critical infrastructure, a lot of the tech resources, because it gives access to China, possibly, right? As such, is it valid? No, it's not. Now, taking it from a different angle again, is it fair if, it's not even about making fair, is it the right call if the US decide to say, you know what, irrespective of the advancement that 5G will bring, the fact that we are not yet there, we are not going to leverage others' advancement to our use unless we are able to catch up ourselves. Makes perfect sense to me. From the political side, yeah, we can see it in the news, we can spin it, the news can be spun multiple ways. But for me, if I am today heading any of the national security agencies or I'm at that level or whatsoever, I can easily relate to why we should never have that. Because having it in place exposes the US. Same thing. China just, I think it was last year, made a call that every single tech device that is not manufactured within China is not going to be consumed in China, consumed by Chinese government. Does it make sense to me? Absolutely. If China decides to stop using any US product, does it make sense to me? Absolutely. Put the politics aside. It makes perfect sense to me because China does not know every single detail about those devices. Take HP, for example, or Dell. These are all American brands. If China says we are no longer going to use it, I absolutely understand. Again, keeping the politics aside. Stephanie, yeah, we do. But it depends on where do we use it and how do we use it, right? Um, but oh yeah, we actually do. Yeah, not the intel agencies. I agree. I agree. Anyway, let's let that one go. But um, it depends, right? So most of these decisions, if you start looking at them from, you're right, Stephanie, I did say the government. If you start looking at them from the perspective of the organizational mission, you'll be able to see the rationale behind it. Keeping the politics aside, keeping the protection or whatsoever. Every single executive, if they know what they are doing and they aim to be successful, they will continuously make decisions based on the organization's mission, irrespective of how it looks. Most times, you will find that around national security, it's all about protect, 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 which makes sense, but that same protection is what adds value to the country, to the nation. Let me give you another example. Trying to look at any country that does not have great national security policies, goals, mission, objectives, agencies, active national security mechanisms in place, you will find that they are too exposed. What happens when they are too exposed? It affects the economic whatsoever. You wouldn't want to move there, would you? The more exposed you feel within a country, the more you begin to kind of look for an alternative. It's true. The more you expose you feel within a neighborhood, the more you look for an alternative. The more exposed a risk you can associate to anything, the more you are looking for a way to manage it, right? As such, we can instantly relate to why a lot of executives will make decisions from that angle. Now, when it comes to getting the executives on board, which a lot of us here, if you are in this class, you are taking the risk management, I can say there are 2 or 3 types of people. There are those of you that are taking it to like, it's just part of the security. No, it's just part of the core requirements for the class. Let me just finish this and just move forward. I don't care. Give me a B, I'm all. Fine, you do you. I agree with you. You're not my favorite student, but obviously I can kick you out. I will just support you, get your B and move on. There are those ones that are, hey, how can I actually sit for this certification? Because I really want to know this. I'm like, yeah, you're my best friend, you know? So for those that are in that bucket, I would say as we kind of move forward, as well as we evolve in our different careers, we start getting into those different roles. I don't care, even if you run your own set, I agree with you. But even if you run your own organization or you have a startup or whatsoever, guess what? At some point you answer to somebody. I don't care whether you're receiving funding or not, customers or not, you actually answer to someone or you are tailoring your things to somebody. That somebody could be, it doesn't have to be human, but you are not just doing it for you. You are doing it to achieve a purpose. You define that purpose. As such, there will be importance in doing things from that value and mission perspective. But again, for us as you start moving in up the chain, especially for those of us that are more on the managerial track and some of those that chicken out of the engineering and technical perspective, technical tracks and move on to the managerial tracks because we are crazy, I guess. You will find that as you move up, most of your work is around convincing people. That is just the truth. Either convincing people or trying to provide rationale around this is valuable. As such, our field is now that it's becoming more of the norm, you will find like a lot of organizations are spending dollars because they can see the impact. But we all know that security, it's used to be more challenging where actually getting funding on that angle is more difficult. If you disagree with me, go talk with Equifax or Anthem, right? So you find like as you move up, if you continuously see security from a protection only perspective, you are always in a defensive, you find yourself more on the defensive where you are trying to continuously convince like, hey, it's not only protection, it's important whatsoever. Whereas if you embrace this, what you're doing is adding value and change the narrative from a positive side, you will find that it's easily relatable. Because I will tell you this, please, if there is any executive in here, please, I'm actually asking for this because I'm not an executive. I always say this in this class. It's kind of odd, the fact that, okay, I have some questions around people with this for the certification, please, because it's becoming a bit distracting. Please know that this class has no relation whatsoever with either ISACA or the certification. We are only making reference to those materials because they are heavily used across the industry or the government. has no affiliation whatsoever with either ISACA or the certification. Ask me how this class will get you the certification. You're asking the wrong person. I might be able to tell you from a personal viewpoint, but this class has no relationship with the certification other than just using the certification resources to help you drive forward. I'm sorry, Stephanie. I know I'm sad too, but it's okay. We'll be all right. So yeah, um, if you decide to actually see it from a value perspective, you will find that you're able to actually communicate with those executives. And I was about to say, if you're an executive in this class, I always make this point. I am not an executive, so I'm just a senior manager, right? And it's just kind of odd because this class is more of that perspective and the experience than it is the content. I would like to believe that everybody at the PhD level should be able to pick a book and understand. So as such, you will find that this class, or excluding the activity part, it's more about discussing on that mindset and approach and how you see things. As such, sometimes I feel like some of the executives in the class are better positioned to also add to the class. So please, if you're at an executive level, please chime in if you feel the need. I do not mind handing over to you to kind of share your own experience. But I know this, if you want to really either get funding, be able to achieve your security objectives, you have to be able to present it to executives in a manner that speaks to them, which is that mission and goals of the organization. All right, so let's dive in a little bit on that governance, right? We already talked about what risk governance is. We also know the risk governance objectives. However, what exactly is the governance aspect of things? I did see your comment, Jacob. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Governance, more on policies, setting the tone of an organization, all of those things. We will talk later in depth around organizational culture and how it impacts the organization, right? Set, it's okay. We'll touch on that as well later. I don't want to read off the slide, but we have all talked about this. Establish and maintain a common view of risk. That's part of the risk governance objectives. Again, because it's an organization with a unique, either the same mission, trying to achieve something, you will realize that it is very important and of paramount importance, I guess, same thing, to set the tone of the organization, how it achieves its mission, as well as what needs to be. It has to be the same language across the entire organization on things that are quite important. You can't let everybody decide what is important or what is not important. The organization must have some sort of a governance structure where there is that one single thing that applies across. Those are where you start getting into policies, right? If we take it from the government side of things, you have laws in place, how an organization should behave. I'm not trying to get into philosophy here, but we'll start getting into ethics, the morals, how the expectation of everybody across, or rather within the society, right? Same thing with every company, every organization. There are those expectations that we tend to have. Organizational policy, be it bring your own device, or every single individual must change their password within a certain number of days. Or if you meet this bucket, like most organizations, they have their governance structure. When it comes to handling risk, the tone of how risk should be addressed, not necessarily how from an implementation perspective, but the approach and setting those risk culture must come from the governance viewpoint. It must come from the executives. If there is none, or the executive does not value that, Equifax happen, right? Anthem happen. All of these major things happen that are really crazy. Again, it doesn't have to be from just technical viewpoint. A lot of risk within organizations could be identified. But when we align it with risk, why do we need to have risk governance in place? I will use Nist for example. When you look at Nist is not the starting point. FISMA is. Who signed FISMA? It's part of literally an act that was passed by the Congress, but it still came from the presidency. There was an executive order. It came from the top of the chain. How do we achieve FISMA compliance? Is what was passed on to Nist. But Nist didn't set those governance structure. Nope, it all came from FISMA. So every organization must set the tone. How that is achieved will now begin going down. Again, make risk-aware business decision. These are all things that happens at the governance level, right? Ensure that risk management controls are implemented and operating correctly. There's a bridge. One could say, oh, this is more of a responsibility, not accountability. But then, while executives might not necessarily go down the chain to say like, show me the poems. If you don't know what a poem is, then don't allow me confuse you. We'll talk also about it around risk registers, but show me what you did whatsoever. Executives might not ask for that, but they are on the hook for ensuring that it is in place. How do they achieve that? They set the right people, they hire the right people, they ensure that their employees are educated enough to achieve that, right? Okay, it says a risk in one area is a threat to all other areas of the enterprise. I remember in the previous class, someone boldly said this is inaccurate. I did agree with them, but at the same time, I disagree. Why do I say this? Every single unit of an organization could have a negative impact on the whole organization. How it impacts it is the difference. One, it could be not a major thing, nobody cares, and another could be big, but it does not mean that it is not impacting that organization. Every silly decision or even taking no action within a certain unit within an organization could actually impact the organization. It could also be the fact that the employee is not working enough has resulted into us spending more money to hire another person. That's an impact. Yeah, we might not hear about it, we might not see it in the news, but it's still an impact. It's costing more dollars. So a risk in one area could be a threat to all other areas of the enterprise. Governance and risk management, they all require what? Information. We will talk in depth about that information, but again, you find that we are all shaped based on our experiences. And for me, studying information security, I easily associate a lot of things with information, but still within the IT realm, we find a lot of things we're doing are actually aligned to information, data, all of these things, which we'll talk about it. Assets within an organization could be a product, but that product could also be information. Let's take Coca-Cola, for example. If I'm to ask someone randomly, what do you think is the most important thing to Coca-Cola? Someone will say, oh, their product, Coca-Cola. It's awesome. They have it for a year. But at the same time, someone will say, the recipe to Coca-Cola, both are accurate. But is it truly the recipe or is it the information of what the recipe is, right? So a lot of things you can begin to deduce them the information. Even if Coca-Cola is the one who is coming up with the raw materials that result into the recipe, again, is it just the raw material or is it the information that results into those raw materials, right? That is around how to come up with those raw material. A lot of things, when you start looking at them from that perspective, you can deduce them to information. Why are we talking about this? Because you find if you yes, I agree. Brand name, it's very important. We will talk into that. Reputation, all of those things. But when you talk about the brand name and the reputation, how will it get damaged? Let's talk about the brand name, for example. How will it get damaged? By someone trying to basically claim the same Coca-Cola brand and make it, let's say I started manufacturing fake Coke products and I'm putting them out there. Yes, I'm affecting the Coca-Cola brand, but am I affecting the Coca-Cola brand by just doing the fake product? Or is it that I have the wrong information as such, I'm making the wrong product and make it claiming that it is Coca-Cola? right? Same thing with reputation. All of these things, you can begin aligning them with information. I'm not saying information is the only thing you can align with. I'm saying they all require accurate information, right? To achieve governance and risk management. They pretty much require accurate information. Any information inaccuracy could result into an impact or a threat or any of those things. Now, moving into information in itself, when you look at technology, we look at all the work we do, we look at the implementations. Maybe you are in the business of automation, maybe you're automating things, maybe you are building a product for employees, maybe you're whatsoever. You find that information is vital. Information is generic, information that we store within technology, we call it data, right? As such, most times we have our computers, what do we do? Information processing. We do a lot of information processing. We are taking it from one place, going back all the way to the basics, right? Charles Babbage are on garbage in, garbage out, zeros and ones, whatsoever. All of these could fall under information processing. You have your credentials, or maybe your most important vital information within your computer. As such, you don't want anybody to access it. You have, it could be a picture or whatsoever. Those are all information. We store information in technology. Most organizations back in the days, either file cabinets, bunch of, I don't know. It's amazing that libraries are still in business. I don't want them to go out because I find solitude in there, but at the same time, you know, everything has been digitized. But these are all information. Where do we store them lately? In technology. In technology products. As such, it is of vital importance we have policies, standardizations, all of these on how we achieve that, how we add value to that. What do we say is adding value? Adding value is a cumulative of achieving the purpose we want to achieve, protecting that information, all of those things. So I'll give you a key hint here. In this class, do not come to me with security is protection, risk is protection. You and I are gonna fight. If we are in person, you and I are gonna fight. Yeah, I know, I'm just kidding. You might think you punch me down, but it's all good. I'm not that violent, but we'll see. You and I are still gonna fight. Value is what we're trying to achieve in this class, not just protection. We see value as, we see protection as a component of adding value to the organization's objective, whatsoever. Quick hint, if you see a question in my quiz, or ask those who have the CISSP, the series, all of these managerial certifications and whatsoever, if you ask them, they will tell you, like, you see a question that directly speaks to you, but it doesn't mean it's the answer, unless that question you can pinpoint how it helps the organization achieve its objective, how it adds value to the organization. So I'll give you a hint. If you, and that's the same reason why you find people with MBAs, business backgrounds, they do better. Yes, it's a cybersecurity certification, but they instantly relate to it. Whereas you, with your 100 years of technical experience, you're like, no, excuse my language, God damn it, this doesn't make any sense. This is BS, blah, blah, blah. Whereas someone coming from a business background, all they know is, especially when it is related to making profit, all they know is, where can we get the value? Where is the value coming from? Where can we, all of those things. As such, that's true, Jacob. I absolutely agree. Oh my God, I wish I'm in Ashburn now. Not all the way in Loudoun County, but yeah, that's, I think Loudoun County in this area has one of the best cooling system as well. Well, Fairfax does, but anyway, that's a bit for another day. You'll find that a lot of people from business background do well in the certifications, but it's not only in the certification. I dare you, if you look at most organizations, you'll find that people with business mindset, if they happen to be the ones that are leading the organization moves forward than people who actually know the business of the organization. Let's take a hospital, for example. You'll find that a hospital that is being run for profit, a change to that, for profit. Keep your morals aside. It's not a philosophy class. Whether a hospital should be for profit or not is beyond the scope. But let's take a hospital, for example. A lot of people will say, it only makes sense for the chief medical officer or whatsoever, the chief medical whatsoever, someone with the 100 years of the medical background to be the person heading the organization. And I disagree. No, absolutely not. I will always pick someone who has zero medical skill set, but understands how to add value if value means profit to that organization over someone who has the technical skill set. Mind you, I used to come from a technical background as well. So I'm not taking sides. I'm not all about the money, but we're giving an example to an organization that is all about the money. So same rationale why you find someone coming from there making those decisions. Let's talk a little bit. I don't know if this will put me in a hot soup, but I'm still gonna do that. Let's take Apple, for example, right? Back in the days, there was this, a lot of people these days are saying, yeah, I don't understand why Apple will never make the best charger. Come on, I have one single iPhone. I have messed up more than 1 million chargers, blah, 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 blah. Do you know why they wouldn't make one? Could be that that's a money generating pipeline. They're not in the business of satisfying just you. They're also in the business of making profit. So long as you keep buying the product, why are they going to change it, right? Or you will find like someone saying, Apple is no longer innovative. Apple is no longer whatsoever as it used to do. God, I miss Steve Jobs. Oh God, I miss this, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. Apple has never grown like they are making now, even though they are not maybe as innovative as they are before. Why? Because they have maybe identified that thing that is more generating that innovation that you're talking about. So at the same time, that's how executives think. Please, if there's any other executive like in here that feels like I am inaccurate, please let me know. Like I'm that as serious. Call me out. I think I'm open-minded enough to take it and I'm willing to learn as well. But I know that's how executive thinks. Now, for you as a risk professional, you would say, yeah, just because that's how executives think doesn't mean we should do things that way. That's another risk. Unless you're able to find the best way to achieve that objective that you need to achieve. Your own objective as a risk professional could be make sure that the organization is secured, make sure the organization is protected. Do you have the dollars? No, you lean on someone who has the dollars. As such, it's a risk if you decide not to speak to them. If you decide to speak your own language, not their own language, unless that executive is willing to sit down and understand where you're coming from, it could be a risk as well. Whereas if you speak their language, which is adding more value, whatever value is to them, then you could find it that is part of another way of getting to them. We are in the business as risk professionals. We are in the business of mitigating risk. And I assure you one of those risks is actually dealing with executives. All right, I'll catch up quickly with this. Someone said, with respect to Huawei, shouldn't security policies and security gates be product agnostic? Example, GDPR, blah, 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 blah. Again, let's take Huawei, for example. I'm making a claim, I'm not saying it's true, but you brought a good point, Jacob. Is that Huawei's objectives? When you start saying, shouldn't security policy be all of this? That's your own viewpoint. What is Huawei trying to achieve? Do you know? Maybe Huawei is intentionally deciding not to put a security mechanism. This is my claim, this is my opinion. I'm not saying that's what it is. But if Huawei is like, their objective is actually to get their product out there so they're able to gain access to people's information, that differs with your own viewpoint, sir. It differs completely. If Huawei feels like, you know what, we are going to close everything so that we are able to achieve our objective of if everybody is using our product and they are unable to put their own compliance requirements, security controls, whatsoever, it allows us to gain access into their own information. That's what we want to achieve. Yeah, I'm gonna close it. If I'm Huawei, I'm gonna close that if that's what I'm trying to achieve. That just makes common sense because that's my mission, right? As such, if you think Huawei doesn't allow you to implement implement controls that are in compliance with your own organization, it could be it's not the right product for you, because the product does not allow you achieve your own objectives. So that's how I see it. I know I'm annoying. I've heard that a lot of times because people tend to say, why do you have to find a rationale for everything? I'm a risk professional. Unless I understand where the product maker is coming from, I will be unable to understand if it applies to me. Chances are trying to get Huawei to allow me to implement, be it GDPR, Hipaa, whatever control it is, does not align with Huawei's devices' objectives. So I have to know. Take another example, Android devices. Android devices with the Android SDKs and everything, the goal is actually, if you go back all the way back, is not only to ensure that the device is the most protected, the whatsoever. That's not the goal. The goal is to literally expand that knowledge around that open source mentality. Let's just build a tool that is out there, like just a workshop, so everybody come and do what they want with it. That's the purpose of having Android at the basis. When you look at it, I mean, one could say now with GitHub, Microsoft has taken over the really being the frontier of all these open source whatsoever. But I mean, we all know, I'm from Microsoft. I know, like, back in the days, it wasn't that culture. But you take Android, the idea of open source is truly to put it out there so you make it what you feel like, right? That's the mission. That's the goal, to really push things forward. Let's give this tool that allows people to be creative and define what they want. As such, the Android devices, they are open, but it doesn't mean they don't have all the security mechanisms. It's just like it doesn't implement it for you. You have to implement it yourself to your own taste. Take Apple products, for example. Let's take iOS. With iOS, that's not the same mindset. Apple's objective is actually not to cater to all of you tech people that are really this mindset around iOS. I mean, not the Mac OS, but with iOS, it's truly usability. You know, any random person who has zero knowledge with technology whatsoever will find it easy to navigate, will find it usable, but it's done in a secure manner. As such, Apple takes responsibility for all of those, closing those gaps. So to you, the most technical savvy person that you don't mind putting in an application that is not even in production, is just being built, like you're using your device as the test environment, yeah, Apple is not the best product for you. iOS is not the best product for you. You can criticize it as much as you want, but you are chosen to criticize it. But when you look at the company, that is not what it's trying to cater for. No, it's catering to those who are actually meant to have zero experience. So again, coming back to that Huawei thing, what is Huawei trying to achieve? You answer that. Someone says, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. No apologies needed whatsoever, please. Again, maybe the course content will help you towards achieving the certification or not. It depends. I think I clarified this. This class is not meant for the certification purposely. It's truly part of just the requirements for the DSC program at Marymount. And it is only right. I am not a big fan of teaching just for the sake of teaching courses because they serve as the requirements. I am of this new generation of schools should provide you with the right tools that are applicable today. As such, when I got assigned this class, it's actually using some outdated methodologies whatsoever. I literally ripped it off and started using ISACA. I could have gone with ISO, but I decided not to. I went with ISACA because when you look at the commercial sector, ISACA is still relevant. It's truly ISACA approach, like with COVID controls, move things forward. And I also went with Nist because of just, I guess maybe you could say my work as well as being in the Nova area has influenced the decision for Nist. But not just that, a lot of frameworks are using Nist 800-53, talk about Hipaa, all of these are slowly consuming to that. And I think as I mentioned, it's not just for the certification. I don't care if you want the certification or not. It's more of making sure that this class, you get something that is actually directly transferable outside the class. And I assure you, Google it in front of you, you will find that there are a bunch of jobs looking for people with COVID experience, people with Nist framework experience. I was cracking a joke. I always actually crack this joke, like in this area, if you want to stay relevant, you still need to know at a very high level, because it's the one thing that whenever the technology transcends from AI to blockchain to whatsoever, I find applying risk management frameworks and knowing these RMF NIST knowledge is still applicable, because everybody must stay in compliance. So set no worries. However, if you want to know more about the certification on a personal level, I will be able to catch up with you. Let's set up some time. Perhaps a good example of that will be target breach. If you yeah, all of those are good example. Brand name, some libraries, we touched at that. Making sense why I got CISSP at the second try coming from a software developer. Yeah, welcome to the club, Nameka. You're absolutely right. Well, now to be fair for Apple and iOS, it is based on FreeBSD, which are far more secure than most things. Yeah, I agree. But when you look at it from a FreeBSD, not meant for users, but rather from development, right? Look at Mac OS as well. It's again still the free Unix version of things, but it's just what Apple is leveraging to build their own product, not necessarily what they are pushing out. I think all their OS are kind of fully locked, unlike the Android systems. But yeah, Namika, yours is actually a funny comment on why you got it on the second try. Truly, coming from that tech perspective, I will tell you this though. I want to see, well, God help us from users in general. Unfortunately, that's what we are in the business of. That's the truth. Um, we are catering to users. Users own the market, right? That's the truth. That's what makes that money. And I guess we are in the US, we are in a capitalist environment. So why is it just gonna make the... Yep, I agree with you, John. That's a true classic response. Users pay the bills. We all want the users to consume it, unless we are talking about national security, which we are still the users. But what next? All right, moving forward, based on the information we touch, I guess it makes sense why we need to have IT, governance, and risk management, right? So what is that? What is IT governance and risk management? Everybody should be able to talk about this. From evaluation, all of these nice things, value creations. I have said value how many times in this class? Maybe I should. It would be nice if someone will tell me how many times I said value. I'll show you by the end of this class, you might as well change my name to Ibrahim Value. Value, value, value. I love the word, value. Okay, resource optimization, all of these nice, fancy, moving forward, positive words that we like to associate security to place, even if you disagree with it, just take it. Executives love it, just take it. Benefit and objective realization, business continuity, all of these things, right? But compliance, and I want someone to tell me, what exactly is compliance? Seriously, put it in the chat, unmute yourself, it's fine, let's take a minute or two to be chaotic. So feel free to unmute yourself if you want to catch up on what exactly is compliance. What do you think is compliance? Come on, it's my way of taking a minute break so I drink some water and just shut up. I've been boring you guys to death with my own words. All right, adherence to governance in place. I like that. Meeting agreed upon criteria. Okay, meeting formally approved benchmarks. I like it. Benchmarks can throw a lot of people off. One thing I also want to add quickly, because I see benchmark, in as much as we like using all of these words, benchmark, compliance, whatsoever, governance, blah, blah, blah. I want to add something real quick that we security professionals deal with, and not everybody is willing to accept it, but it makes a huge difference. It is very good for us to maintain the clear meaning of our different terminologies. Like someone earlier said, risk mitigation. Lately, mitigation is synonymous with addressing risk, which truly isn't right. But I want to say something. Our ability to take all of these huge, big security related words and say it in the most meaningful, easy manner without having those words makes a huge difference to executives when you're trying to bring them on board, or any other individual, especially folks with no security background, including our colleagues. You find if you're let's say you're a CISO, just within the IT, maybe security sector, right? We all know that people are often the number one vulnerability, but I can tell you, hey, I like your nephew. Tell him hi. But let's say you want to bring your colleagues on board. We constantly talk about how it's important, how risk and security is everyone's responsibility. Everyone should adhere to it. We want all the employees to make sure that the door is shut behind them, that no one is still getting all of those kind of things. But here's the thing, everyone have their own objectives. When you go to the HR department, someone in HR, please, nothing personal to you if you're in HR, when you go to the HR department, their objective is around employee retention, ensuring like you and the other person aren't fighting, ensuring like no one is opening the fridge and taking a lunch, ensuring that we are hiring the right people, all of those kind of things, right? Why do you feel the need to really change their objectives to security? Why do you want them to be as educated as you are in security? Why do you want them to understand why benchmark, compliance, security framework, Nist, why do they need to do that? That's the same reason why the organization have you in place. That's the same reason why the organization have legal department in place to ensure all of those things. So the HR just focus on who is the best person, and they keep annoying us on LinkedIn with, hey, there's a job here. Do you want to come over? Right? That's the job. That's the objective, ensuring employee retention and ensuring Fortune doesn't take my lunch out of the fridge or something like that, right? So as such, it becomes your responsibility as the security professional to really dumb it down, those big words, dumb it down to the HR people so they instantly relate to it, so they are more vigilant on it. But you go there and say, make sure you use the right benchmark when you're using, like, come on, I'm in HR. Tell me what benchmark is, and not just telling me what benchmark is, tell me how does not using the right security mechanisms or doing the right thing from a security perspective will cost me my job. Tell me how I'm gonna get fired if I eventually onboard someone without actually validating if they're, I don't know, US citizenship or green card or whatever work authorization document that they have. If I do not validate it, how is it gonna cost my job? Tell me directly something that speaks to me. As such, it's another thing. We have this culture, which I tend to consider is toxic sometimes in the security realm, of really using these big words, governance, security, regulations, zero-day vulnerabilities. Unless you're speaking to another colleague, I think it's really less important to talk to the general public using that. I don't even publish papers that are intended for the general public using those big grammars. All right, going back, applying prescribed standards. I agree with you, Rebecca, and you get an off because it's a class related to security, but this does not communicate to that person in HR. Ibrahim in HR does not relate to what applying prescribed standards mean. It sounds way too confusing. I feel like I'm gonna sleep. Compliance is operating in accordance with the agreed spec. Agreed. By the way, Rebecca, I also do agree with you, by the way. Meeting the standards and guidance provided. All of these things, I agree with all of you. One important aspect has to be added to the compliance equation is authority. Authority, especially around accountability. So again, authority. Okay, John, I'm gonna crack a little joke here. I'm a millennial. We are sensitive to all of these big words like authority. What do you mean authority? But no, just kidding. I agree with you. The ability of executives to really enforce something is around that authority. Obviously, every policy must be enforceable, And management or executives or whoever is responsible and accountable for that must ensure that it is enforced. So there is often a direct correlation around compliance and enforcement. I agree with you. You can only effectively delegate responsibility if you also delegate the authority to act. Not necessarily, I 100% disagree with that. You can effectively delegate the responsibility to someone if you held yourself accountable on that aspect. Here's one thing, someone who delegates responsibility is always accountable for that. They can transfer the accountability to someone, but still their head at the top. Because if you have the power to assign something to someone, then it means you are accountable to it. So just because you delegate the authority doesn't negate the fact that you are also accountable for that authority. So enforcement, it's always from the top. Even CEOs, president, the number one person, is still accountable to their stakeholders. Most organizations that you find people are not accountable or not answerable to anyone is those situations where the person is the sole owner of the organization and they set the tone that it only serves them. But guess what? Indirectly, they are also answerable to their customer. If you're building a product and you only own the organization, nobody has a stake, just you. No one has any authority. You still answer to the customers, because if you build a product that they don't want, they will comment, feedback, and such shaping how you approach things. If you're not building a product, then I don't know. Please let me know if there's any situation where you are only serving yourself, just you alone, without having to relate with anyone. I guess then maybe that could be it. Let me look this up. In my master's class, I was told to write policy at an A-grade reading level, just like these people. I like that master's program. Can you let us know which program is that? But I really do like it. Guess what? We also have it in this class. One of the reason why I said your comments on the security response must be limited to 100, between 150 to 200 words is one thing. You find that a lot of us, especially at the PhD level, we consume so much. It's just natural. We consume so much information and then we decide everything is important. But know that sometimes there's that so much information that tends to become really, really just an overwhelming. As such, me limiting it that it must be read. Some of you will go and read a lot of papers, a lot of things related to the response, and you find like every single thing is important, but it's not. You must find a way to communicate to me in 200 words. And yeah, I don't know if Mariman does this, but I remember during my program, we have this explaining your dissertation in like a minute, and then 3 minutes and 5 minutes it has with prizes. So unless you're able to explain your 200, 300, 100, whatsoever word dissertation to me in just a single sentence, 2 sentences, I don't think you have nailed it. I know it's difficult, but it comes valuable. Again, it works with executives. That's why we always practice that, is it elevator pitch talk? Because no executive have the time for you to educate them. They are looking at you to just let them know at a very high level what exactly it is you mean, and it must be it. That magic way of talking. All right, you delegate responsibilities. You will keep hearing this word. I agree with that bluff, yep, all the time. You'll keep hearing GRC. Again, lately, the entire sector is just having it as governance, risk, and compliance. Tomorrow, we'll come up with another mentality, another approach, different generation, different way of handling things. But right now, we are in the GRC way of things where we have the governance plugged in. Back in the days, you will hear a lot of risk management because it's more limited to just the risk and compliance. But everybody is realizing, yes, Bridget, I agree with you. I was targeting 8:15 to take the break, but we'll instantly take a break here. But you hear a lot of that risk and governance, governance, risk and compliance. And we'll touch on tools, but everybody should be able to know what risk, governance, and compliance means is including identifying the different roles as well as what does the governance means within GRC, not just the governance direct definition, but what capabilities, function does governance is expected of governance, what is expected of risk, and what is expected of compliance. Compliance, you hear a lot about assessment, auditors, those check in, right? Those making sure that things are the way they should be. Those are all part of compliance, and we also need it. We tend to be pissed off them if you are the one being assessed or auditors. We are always trying to get over it real quick, because what do? They check us, fact check every claim we make and try to identify where we are missing things. All right, let's take a 10 minutes break. Let me see if I can pause this recording. Not necessarily. Dave, if you can pause it on your side, please let me know. If we can't, we will just cut it. Okay. Oh, thanks for continuing with the recording as well. So now that we have touched on the high level, we have kind of set the tone for the class, which is value, right? We want to see things from an added value perspective, not necessarily just protection, right? We want to position ourselves to allow us to achieve our goals. All of those business terminologies that are being used. FYI, I used to be a consultant as well, so if you hear me using a lot of leverage, value, positioning ourselves, aligning ourselves, all of those things you hit out at work and you come to class and here and there. Yeah, just bear with me. This class is more work. It's more of work than it is a class. Okay, so let's touch on the different roles. Just a second. For some reason, my slide is not working. All right, cool. I'm just gonna put everything up there and we'll catch up on it, right? So we have the senior managements in this context. I meant like the executive level and all of that. And we touch a little bit on how pretty much the executives set the tone for everything, right? They really drive the organizational culture or whatsoever. And for us to be able to have that kind of security, risk, whatsoever kind of culture where it helps you as a risk professional achieve your own objectives, whatever that may be. If you see it more as adding value or protection or whatsoever, but making sure if you are the CISO, another Equifax doesn't happen, so you are not on the hook for answering to why it happened, right? So to make sure we kind of position ourselves to ensure that doesn't happen, it is very important to know the difference level where security related stuff plug in. And this is not trying to show an organizational structure, but rather what should be done security wise at which level. So at an executive level, an executive will never ever sit down and be the one implementing controls. Will they? Absolutely not. They will never sit down and configure the laptop for the new hire. No, they won't. Their job is to make sure that that new hire or the device that they are receiving doesn't expose the organization, doesn't becomes a risk. As such, what is the executive role in this capacity? It's more of setting the tone, using policies. Why do we say having a policy? Because to organizations, policy is what law is to us outside within a society. Policies are the final thing. An organizational policy, yeah, you can change it based on certain conditions, but truly that is the approach, right? That is the law of that organization. Who is responsible as well? Sorry, who needs to ensure that the right policy is in place that applies to everybody within the organization, so everyone works towards ensuring the organization is functioning such that it achieves its missions, objectives. That's senior management. by senior management here, I mean the executive band, right? But again, we have the senior management, they are also influenced and shaped by the board, the stakeholders, all of that. Now, why do we see they are influenced by the stakeholders or the board or any single entity that is basically positioned to actually influence the executive? It's because executive decisions sometimes, and I said sometimes because you have other executives taking a different approach. Either they don't last or they convince the board and change the culture. But they are really influenced by their stakeholders. Let me give an example. If you are buying stocks of a company, you're basically a stakeholder in that company, irrespective of the percent you have. Um, you're in the business of making sure your stocks grow. They become the new Tesla. You know, they shoot 400 or how many, whatever 100% is it that Tesla went from 0 to 100 real quick, I guess. But you are basically buying because you really want to make profit. As such, what will make you happy and make sure you still hold that stock and actually even spend more money on it is management and that same organization making you happy. You as a stakeholder, you are influencing the executive's decision on how they approach things. They have to make decisions that will not negatively impact those stocks, the shares, or whatsoever that will result in those stocks going way down. Well, unless you're Elon Musk, that's a different thing. You can go ahead and tweet that your stocks are way too high and then it becomes red. But hey, look at that, still work out, right? So if you are also in that business of, let's just see how crazy it goes, I guess that's your risk tolerance. But the truth is, most executives are basically framed, their choices are around satisfying the board, the stakeholders, or whatsoever. Again, so as such, they are responsible for setting the enterprise, organization, company, whatsoever policy at a high level. They do it organization wide. As you come down to say mid-management, where um, the head of IT, the head of HR, whatsoever, they set their security function policies based on their own specific organization, but they are also responsible for ensuring that the policies that they set goes aligns with the general enterprise policy. So if the CEO is in the business of making everybody happy by ensuring that the stakeholders get money, then the head of IT should also be in the business of minimizing cost within the IT sector so that they generate more, or at least they burn more, less money than they burn more, so that the organization will have a better turnover. Again, the head of HR should find ways to make sure that employee retention and the work-life balance, all of those nice things that make sure everybody hangs around our employees so that they don't keep losing their employees, which translates to losing more money. Again, that's the policy at that level. When you come down to all the way to the bottom, you find that those are more execution and implementation. That is where you keep hearing words like standards, baselines, guidelines, procedures, all of those terminologies. And here we're going to touch in depth about that, right? You hear the standard, it's around similar to Nist standards, right? Or Hipaa or whatsoever, but baselines is just the minimum requirement that must be achieved at that level. Then you start going into guideline. When you take a guideline, what is it? It starts telling you, oh, this is this, this is that, these are the current guides to achieve a specific objective. Again, procedures tells you, like an example of a procedure will be how to set up your iPhone, right? You go, you look at it, it tells you do this, do that. But who does that? Who does that execution and implementation? Always the level below the mid-management. That's where you find the analyst. Again, don't come after me if you're an analyst or a sysadmin or, the early career level. That's where you find most people at that level. Truly, no matter the organization, their job is not necessarily to influence within the organization, but rather to satisfy or rather to do what is being instructed. As bad as it sounds, people at that level are expected to actually just do what they are being told based on either of these, the procedure, the guideline, the baseline. It could be that, yeah, they are, everybody is looking at them to actually come up with how to do it, but their job is to do. And then you start going up, you're looking more into how can you influence as well as shape things, and then you go up there. It's not just about influencing, but you're also setting the tone across the entire organization. Again, Stephanie, I agree with you, strategy, and then as you mentioned, support. Now, there is the compliance, audit, change management, all of those things that we didn't touch upon here, right? What's their role? Basically, it is to ensure that there is alignment across things. Again, alignment is such a consulting word, but it's truly to ensure that these procedures, guidelines, what is being achieved at this level, right? That is being set by this management, what they are setting to achieve here aligns with what they said, right? So senior management said it, these define what it is and how, right? And these do. You find the committees, the audit, the whatsoever. Their job is to ensure what is being done here aligns with what is being said here. Ensure that this is in compliance with this. Now, does it have to be between just executives and senior management? Absolutely not. It's at different levels, right? Just a second, got a bit distracted here because I'm trying to read the link. All right, cool. So what is the role of the audit? It could be, oh, there is the board. Even before the board, let's say there is again this entire organization that has this structure. All of this is related to the health sector, right? Irrespective of the policy of the hospital or whatsoever place, let's see. Okay, so my mic is now. I will see that. Let me know if you can. But yeah. Okay, let's fix that real quick. I'm gonna pause a little bit. Seems like, yeah, I did see a sign that says. Yeah, I'm working on it. Just give me a second. For some reason, I'm. Okay, I'm gonna set a different mic real quick. Let's hope it actually allows me to do that. Okay, someone said much better. Is it working now? Please let me know if it's better right now. I'm trying to get a dedicated mic, I guess. Oh, okay, perfect. So I'm just gonna move on with this. Again, let me know if it's not working. I'm trying to see where my hands-free mic is. I've been using the one from the computer. But yeah, let me know if it's going in and out again, please. So yeah, as I mentioned, let's say this is a health organization. And by law, again, I'm coming back to how the society is being governed. There are clear instructions on how the health sector should behave. Maybe that is part of that, how the health sector is being regulated. Again, what is that? Maybe a law, could be Hipaa, right? Auditing, as well as all of these committee, the audit, the change management and anything, could be between the organization and that compliance or standard or whatever, could be between that and Hipaa. Ensuring that, did I type? Ensuring that the organization complies with the regulation. That is also part of auditing. So there's always, well, not necessarily always, it depends on the organization. You'll find like there's either the internal compliance team, we always have the external compliance one. On the government side of things, we have the GAO for the public, which we are going to talk a little bit about the GAO when we get into Nist. But then we also have all of these big organizations you keep hearing, like the big four organizations. For my fellow, well, I'm no longer a consultant, but I'm no longer in consulting, but you hear of Deloitte, all of Deloitte and PwC, whatsoever. They're all audit firms Yeah, they do have other functions, but that's what they do sometimes, or rather majority of the time, ensuring compliance that whatever this is doing is in compliance with what is being said, right? Again, the best way, and what do we mean by the best way? The most effective way of achieving things is when it is coming from a top-down approach. By top-down approach, um, for those of you that know exactly what I'm talking about, just bear with us. These are the other parts of the class that I said can get boring. But for those of you who do not relate to what I'm trying to say is, think of which of these scenarios will make more sense? An analyst at the lower level deciding things that is applicable to the entire organization, or the president of the organization saying this is what we are going to do, and then everybody listening. At the analyst level, you can keep screaming. Nobody is going to listen to you unless they are below you. It will be difficult, I guess. I shouldn't say nobody, but yeah, it will be difficult for people to really listen to you. Whereas if you are the president of the organization, or the CEO, or the person heading the organization, it's literally an email away for everybody to get in line. So from security perspective, as security professionals, again, goes back to me using the words like value whatsoever. It is always, always of paramount importance for us to make sure that we have the senior management on board. We have whoever is at the top of the chain on board, right? Imagine earlier I was given an example with like Tesla stock. Right now, if everybody within Tesla who owns a Tesla stock feel like they don't align with what is going on with Tesla and they start dumping their stocks, that's literally a top-down approach, because they are the main driving force behind it, right? Before you realize it, you'll find a company issuing a statement because the people that are driving the organizations are not aligned as such. The people driving the culture of the organization, if it happens to be stakeholders that maybe buy the shares, if there's a general consensus, everybody's speaking the same thing, maybe go on Twitter and start ranting and everybody's dumping the stocks. Before you realize it, the company will issue a statement and change course. That's a top-down approach. Whereas if it's an employee here as an analyst, they can keep screaming. So long as the stakeholders are happy, I know it is bad, especially around work culture, but you'll find that truly it's all siloed, right? Again, I'm going to just call out companies because there are practical examples of that. You look at Uber, for example, there was instances where a lot of people at the lower level are still complaining. I mean, a lot of them keep complaining about, oh, terrible work culture. I've seen it on Twitter where fellow security professionals are all complaining, but still it's not gaining much traction. Why? Because Uber is finding ways to make the stakeholders happy. Their app is effective. Their you order a ride, it's there. Uber Eats, it's effective. They are still meeting the stakeholders. Then as such, it's not really impacting the stakeholders. And you find that Uber is not really responding to the lower level. If everybody now is to get on board and be pissed, you will see that Uber start issuing a statement and changing course of action. So again, that top-down and bottom-up approach, right? The most effective one. Not saying that one is the best, but if you're looking for the most effective one, we're going to go with the top-down, right? Again, so we have talked a lot about all of this. Actually, I'm gonna go back a little bit. We have talked about a lot about governance, risk, whatsoever. But then I also gave an example of when, depending on the organization's mission, where I give an example with Walmart and say, I can't remember the other one, but a bank, for example, they have different missions in terms of, well, technically they're all in the business of making profit, but their approach to things are completely different, right? Where I'm saying the risk that Walmart might be able to take if their website is down is completely different with that of a bank. Again, let's take a national security system, for example. Maybe that contains some of the cryptographic keys that the US entire PKI, sorry, ignore the word PKI, I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but let's just say a national security system that holds all the keys to the major security mechanisms of any system in the US within maybe say DOD, CIA, FBI, whatever, you name it. It's just a national security system. When you take that system and try to compare it with your local library computer, how they are going to be handled security-wise completely differs. It is absolutely okay for the library computer to have a security issue so long as it displays the information that is required, right? So let's take an example of ransomware, for example. Uh, Around ransomware, maybe a hacker is able to access that computer and they have now hijacked that computer. They are not trying to just gain access to the computer, but rather they are trying to lock the information contained within the computer so that it's not functioning. But they cannot steal the information themselves. They just render whatever information is within the computer inaccessible, right? Some sort of distributed denial of service attacks, or maybe they just lock the entire system so that nobody is able to access it. All right. When you look at it from a library perspective, if you're going to configure that device, you will configure it so that it's fail-safe, allow the computer to still be accessible because people need it to access the information contained with it. But that information is meant to be public anyway. It's just educational resources that should be out there. Nothing alarming maybe around those information stored on the computer. There's nobody's personal information. There's no national security details within it. So as such, the library can configure the computer to be its fail-safe is to actually allow the computer to be accessible. You take it, same scenario, same situation, and apply it to a place like, say, the DoD or one of those national security systems within the Pentagon or wherever it is, right? Absolutely, absolutely not. The fail-safe is never to let that information out. The information rather, like from the national security viewpoint, it could be better to say the information is destroyed than it is being let out, right? It could contain the information of the spies. It could, all of those things, right? As such, how you handle it completely differs, but they're all risk management. They are all security. Again, another quick one could be, library and national security systems make sense, but even from usability, again, going back to just high-level websites, someone setting up a cupcake shop with just an informational website that is not meant to have any login credential whatsoever. It's just a simple website that is meant to provide the address of that cupcake shop. Don't pick on me just because I said cupcake. It's not like I'm a big fan of cake either way, but who knows? Maybe we'll see. Anyway, it's just need to provide information and a little map like address, let's call it Harry Costa's cupcake shop. Harry, you now own a cupcake. All right. Based on that, if that person decides, you know what? Everybody keeps talking about these TLS certificate that shows HTTPS and it's super important when exchanging information. As such, we need to implement it. But then for me as a risk professional coming in, if I know that Harry Costa's cupcake is, a little bit impacted by maybe whatever is going on, as such, they are trying to save funds, and I look at it and I see the expenses of to get a TLS certificate from maybe, is it Entrust or wherever source it is, it's gonna cost them $200. I mean, it's not that expensive, but yeah, you can get it for free actually, but it's gonna cost $200. From a risk perspective, if I am actually seeing things from a value perspective, and I know that cupcake business is in the business of making money, not necessarily anything, and I look at the website, it's basically nothing, no infrastructure like they don't have any of the infrastructure connected to that website. Chances are they're even going to just host it for free on GitHub. It doesn't connect to any of their computer whatsoever that contains their recipe. I don't think I'm going to install that TLS certificate because what the hell? Nobody needs it. I'm going to just save them the money. They actually need it for something else better. As a security professional, I see it more as adding value. The same concept is not going to apply to a bank's portal that requires exchange of credentials, which I know if the information that is being transferred, the information in transit is not encrypted, then it means someone can actually snoop in and see everything in plain text, maybe the username and password. As such, they'll be able to gain access to someone's funds and transfer it. So as such, no. So these kind of decisions, seeing it from how does it add value to the organizational mission, is more important than seeing it from what is the right thing to do technology-wise. Trust me, if you see it from the technology perspective, that cupcake business, it absolutely needs a TLS certificate. It absolutely needs to have that green dot or green lock as HTTPS, not HTTP, if you try to see it from the technical perspective only. That is because you are seeing it as, oh my God, any information that is being transferred here is going to be in plain text. It's going to be unencrypted. It's going to be out there. But guess what? There's nothing on the website. You're not exchanging anything. Whatever it is you're accessing is just a GET request, a HTTP GET and POST request, right? Around that, it just contains informational. It's just an informational website that is meant to show the direction to Harry Costa's cupcake, which Harry needs to give me one cupcake for creating a cupcake business for him in this class. Anyway, if anyone disagrees with me, please tell me and explain to me why Harry should get a TLS certificate for their business if the risk is minimal, as I explained. Now, let me quickly relate it to the CISSP, all of these certifications that you will see, including the quiz in this class. In as much as I am not a big fan of standardized tests, it kind of makes sense in testing your mindset because trust me, not even the CISSP test knowledge of security, but more of that mindset approach. In this class, as I gave an example, if I just come and say, Harry is about to, Harry, I keep calling your name. I'm going to change a little bit. Let me see, who is it? Fatu is setting up a cupcake business. And Fatu decided that she's going to have an informational website. This is a scenario-based question that maybe is in the quiz or in the exam or whatsoever. Like Fatu decided like she's going to set up a website, but the website, Fatu decided that she is not going to pay for a TLS certificate on her website, even though the website is an informational website containing only Fatu's business address. Is this justified or not? Should Fatu A, get a TLS certificate irrespective of whatsoever because there is a risk? B, Fatu should not focus on getting any certificate because it doesn't add value to its business, to her business. C, Fatu should get a cheaper certificate. D, Fatu should not set up the website. Based on what I just said, most people that come from technical background, they just see website, this here, no TLS certificate, automatically they said Fatu must get a TLS certificate and install it on that website. People that come from that value perspective and seeing it more from that business angle will realize like Fatu's business first is just to get profit because she is making cupcakes. And right now she needs to save a little bit of money. It's not like she's making it a lot due to current conditions. Second, it's just an informational website. There's really nothing to it. So when you evaluate the risk, what's the impact? Like when you evaluate the threat, what's the impact or even likelihood of getting something meaningful? None. As such, it's B. Guess what? This is how you go out and sit down for your CISSP exam and come on, like before they hand over that result to you, feel like, you know what, with my technical experience, I've selected TLS, I've actually nailed it. And then you come out and you're like, what? Oh, by the way, everybody, I realized earlier when I was taking the breaks, I can't remember, I think it's definitely saying her nephew is listening, so I'll definitely be very mindful of the terminologies I use and be careful of my word choices. So you come out of that CISSP certification and exams and said, I have selected all the right answers. No website, no HTTPS, it says no TLS. I mean, it's only right for them to buy that certificate. I don't care how much it is. Gotta put it in there. As such, what happens? Yeah, ISC Square said, ISC Square says, yeah, sorry, these exam whatsoever is it that they write in there, blah, blah, blah. And then you come back here like, this makes no sense to me. It makes sense. Recalibrate your reasoning. That's it. Or else you are not fit for that executive management. Security is not the best thing. Glad I'm making him crack up, Stephanie. But yes, that's the rationale. And please, please, please keep that in mind as you approach this class as well. And I will assume the certification, but Dave can add more to that. I'm not a big fan of exams. I kind of suck at it. But yeah, all right. So we have many, many, many frameworks in place, regulations, standard, guidelines, whatsoever. We instantly talk about Hipaa. You understand that Hipaa is meant to regulate the health sector from how patient records is being handled. PCI DSS is meant to ensure that there is a standard. The entire CAD industry speaks the same language in how they approach things. All of these different things. GDPR, it's EU trying to basically regulate how every single business or provider is handling EU citizens' personal data, right? We talk about ISO. Again, is there anyone who doesn't know ISO? If you don't, it's just the international body that sets that universal language and the universal tone for things. Let me give you a quick example. Sometimes US actually have a lot of influence in this as well. And bear with me, but I'm still gonna say it. I have two backgrounds, being Nigerian and American. US is the only nation in the world that actually have its own way of things above any global approach. That is the same reason why US goes with Fahrenheit and the whole world goes with Celsius. All of those things, right? But ISOs truly regulates and standardized global approach, right? It's the same reason. The reason why you can buy a tire, your vehicle tire, order it all the way from China, it works in vehicles in China and it will work in your vehicle is because there is an ISO standard around that that says L single tires that needs to be used across should comply with this. Else, it's not going to be standardized. Then it's specific to a specific vehicle, maybe within that country. It's okay. ISO is not the law. It's just to set the tone across the globe if everybody's trying to come together and build a product for everyone. And there are a lot of standards, including that of cybersecurity approach as well. Not the best in my viewpoint, but it works. I kind of like Nist controls because they are more exhaustive. One, because they have more money. Nist have more money, so they put in more towards the research. And that's also another thing you find with most US institutions because they get more funding, they have more resources. As such, you find US standards tend to set the tool for global benchmark, but it doesn't necessarily means that only US standards are the best. There are a lot of them out there. It just means which one applies to your organization or to you. However, there are those ones that if you are operating within a specific boundary, then you have to comply with it, right? Again, coming back to the US, you take, let's take motorcycles. There are certain parts of the world that you are allowed to have certain displacements. In the US, there is a limit. You talk about all of those kind of things. Sugar content, for example. If you have ever taken Coke outside of the US, you'll find that it's more sweet than the one in the US. It's because the sugar content is different, actually. A lot of countries tend to regulate their sugar contents as well. So you, for those of you in Atlanta that have been to the Coca-Cola world, if you test, you can, I think there are different versions of Coke and things like that. But these are all around standards, how every single entity regulates it. On the commercial sector, I don't know if I would say ISO standards are commercial, but I put them as commercial because you have to pay to get those controls. They are not free. Unless they change, please let me know. Now, we have like the ISO's 2700 that is focused on security, information security as well. PCI DSS also data security related, not necessarily information and not necessarily cybersecurity, or rather even not, it's not an enterprise risk management, it's just a card industry. So there are no controls within PCI that applies organization-wide. There are just controls that applies relating to cards, ATMs, and things like that. We have the GDPR, everybody knows about it. We all received those annoying emails when it went online. I hated them. I go ahead and unsubscribe. They send me an email letting me know that I've unsubscribed. I'm like, come on, don't send me an email. How about that? But yeah, has its own things as well around GDPR, but it's limited to EU residents. In my viewpoint, it's one of truly the holistic and overarching data protection regulation. By the way, politics goes into this. Still in the US, we do not have a national data protection law. Again, capitalism is playing into that. There is the politics side of it. There is the money making, because if we restrict it at the national level, truly it's going to impact other things. I mean, California passed their own, but if we can have it at the national level, it means some entities cannot sell your information to the art market and whatsoever. That's also almost $1 billion industry. So let's see how it goes. Web trust around public key infrastructures. If you're setting your, I believe that's what web trust is. Again, it provides a framework for how to kind of assess the controls for certification authorities. If you don't know what a CA is, think of when you see that HTTPS, someone is providing it. Those are all the CAs. CIS, that's for the controls from the Center for Internet Security. They are decent. US, I think they are out in New York or something like that. CSTAR, the Cloud Security Alliance, all of that. COVID is created by ISACA. Am I a big fan of it? Absolutely not. It's quite also a bit pricey. Their controls. Is it exhaustive? They make money out of it, so they do put in some effort. But it's also, why am I using it in this class? Because of one thing. I find ISACA has a big community. Not because they are better than the rest that are commercial. In my viewpoint, I'll even say CIS tend to move more faster than COVID controls, but ISACA has a huge following. They have a community, and truly the community is a great community in moving the entire industry forward. So you find that impact around COVID and ISACA frameworks, and they have an exhaustive documentation, including the certifications. That's why I actually chose it in next class. So when we look at it from the government side, the government doesn't, especially US government doesn't use, federal government does not use the commercial entities. Well, some federal agencies use CIS benchmarks for stakes, not for enterprise security controls. We will talk about stakes much later in the class as well, around baselines. But we have like the Nist 800 series, you will hear that about it. You have a lot of hands-on on that. We have Fedramp. There is so much confusion around the difference between Nist and Fedramp. Fedramp is not targeted towards entities, government entities. It's targeted towards cloud service providers. So all of these, anyone that is providing cloud offering to the government must be in compliance with Fedramp. Fedramp also uses Nist controls. Don't worry if you still feel confused. There is a dedicated lecture that we're going to have that kind of shows the differences visually as well as the applicable controls. But Fedramp uses some of Nist controls, and then they have the Fedramp specific controls. We have the DISA and the DoD SRG. So DISA is an organization within DoD. They are also the ones driving DoD compliance, as well as The SRGs are meant, again, for cloud service providers, so take Amazon or whatsoever, but cloud services that are meant for the not just the government sector, but for national security systems relating to the DoD. So the SRG is the security. Oh my God, what is it? SRG Security Something Guide. Wow, I can't remember. That's a shame because I always use the SRG. Anyway, they also provide the overlays, which we'll touch upon, but we are not going to talk about the controls that makes the overlay, but we'll just highlight what overlays mean. You take Hipaa. Everybody should know Hipaa. If you don't know Hipaa, it's just how the government, Hipaa is more on government instruction on how the health sector should handle patient records, anything relating to patients' data. We have the FFIC or FFIEC, which is more around financial institution. It's an examination council, but yep, the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council. Thank you very much. Security Requirements Guide. My God, that's quite a shame that I forgot about it. Anyway, the FFIEC, they focus on the financial institutions. They actually have a tool and they talk a lot about cybersecurity maturity and like those risk profile. We'll also touch high level on what risk profile means, what are those cybersecurity maturity models. At the state level, as I mentioned earlier, so anything from the federal government, you'll find that it applies to the entire nation, right? It's only right. So it doesn't matter which state you are, you have to comply with Hipaa. But there are also those laws that are not passed at the federal level. We have some, like as I mentioned earlier, still the US do not have the national data regulation. And again, we're in the business of generating money and things like that. As such, you will find standardizing it across the board might be not really applicable. As I mentioned, just the arts industry itself and the process of selling your information, it's over $1 billion industry. Imagine if you can tell Facebook to not hear me say that I want a piece of fetish cake, cupcakes, and then I go into Facebook, I start seeing those ads. If I can stop that, yeah, it's gonna impact a bit of revenue on Facebook, right? Whatever. Just selling your information is a huge US thing. Not from technology angle only, even back in the days. All those unsolicited invites we keep getting in the mail and the spam, part of the culture. So some states will take it upon them to regulate, right? This, just think of it more from the law perspective, how states have their own law and federal law as well. I know California recently started the California Consumer Privacy, is it Act, I believe? Yeah, that's the CCPA, which is limited to all Californians, right? It provides Californians, similar to the GDPR, but only limited to Californians. So Californians can now know what information is being collected about them, as well as how it's being collected. And I don't know if they have the right to actually stop that collection, or it is if they have the right to say no sale. I'm yet to look in depth into it, but I know they will have insight into what is being collected by about them, how it is being collected, and they have some influence on whether it should be sold or not, and to whom it should be sold to. As such, it actually, around that selling, it generated a little bit of buzz, like the CCPA is getting into that selling your information whatsoever. NYDFC CFR 500. It's also focused on fund. I have never heard of that one. By the way, there are a lot of them. Joshua, actually, if you want to go off, take your mic off. I do not mind passing on. I know we're coming to the end of the class, but please, if you have something to add on that one you just mentioned, the NYDFS, feel free to.
Yeah, I could talk briefly. It just that's the cybersecurity regulation that New York put in place over the last few years. That kind of it pretty much mandates requirements for cybersecurity for organizations that are financial. I actually used to be the security officer for a financial company that did business in New York. And if you're over the $5 million threshold, there's a lot of requirements defining your third-party management, policies, procedures, secure connections from external entities. I mean, there's just encryption. I mean, it pretty much covers all aspects of what you'd want in a security program in an ideal world, but they kind of mandate it as a requirement. So, and you have to attest that you have it every year, and there's fines for not meeting the minimums.
That's thanks a lot. So it's also another state level, right? New York.
Yes.
Oh, thanks a lot. So everyone, you hear that? It's a state level. You come across there are a lot of them, especially the state level. Sometimes you could even see it at the local level, like county level. I'm yet to see one, but don't be surprised if there is, just like the law. Truthfully, I'll be honest with you, US-wise, I'm just focused on the federal level, other than the California, but it's only because, like for me, I am more at the, I play within the federal level. I wouldn't be surprised for most people that play at the state level, you'll find that they also well versed on that. And keep in mind, some state level regulations are way much better than the federal level. And then also, I mean, there are just a lot out there, like country-wise, like ASD, that's the Australian signal related kind of thing. Like it's just a lot. A lot of them are out there. So keep in mind, you will come across them. Like the SSA 18 is more around auditors. So anyone who is an auditor is quite conversant on SOC. And additionally, you will find that you will kind of, so across the board, you understand what it is, but there are experts that specialize in like COSO, some specialize in COVID, some are SOC, some are just GDPR, some are just FISMA. Some, FISMA, by the way, is more like Nist, like ISO, some have their own certifications, some do not, but these regulations, some are defined by the industry someone is working on, some are not. If you're a doctor, you should at least know at a high level, even if it's not how to implement, but you should know how to manage patients' record. Someone who is in the financial sector might not care about that, but they certainly will know about those sub-controls around the SSAE, right? All of those, there are many. So in this class, what we are going to do is we are going to look into the ISACA approach just to set the tone of most security frameworks. How do you approach them? Not how you implement them, but rather how do you approach them? How do you understand the different steps? It will introduce you, like the ISACA approach, the book we are using, will introduce you into the different things that you should look out for. It doesn't mean it's applicable across the board, but it gives you that foundational knowledge of the different steps of where to start and how to end, because it touches on identifying the risk in itself. But before even identifying the risk, what are the recipes and the different things that need to come in place to form the risk, all the way to assessment and audit. Then when it comes to how to implement it, we are going to use the Nist risk management framework. In that, on that part of the class, I will repeat this. I am not looking for you to just listen. No, you're gonna get your hands dirty. You are going to implement. I love this part because for most of the executive at the senior level folks that are in this class, you will find yourself doing the things that you assigned your analysts to do. Then you're gonna go through the pain they go through. Maybe then you'll kind of, realize what they go through. And then also for the analysts, as well as the people that are just starting their career in the class, as you start taking those quizzes and everything here, and you start seeing like you're fumbling a lot, you realize, maybe I need to change my mindset on how I approach things. And then you'll begin to relate to your executives and your senior management. All right. This is something I usually do for fun in the class, but because due to the nature of things, we are sharing the slides and the content ahead of time, so it wouldn't be as funny as it used to be. I usually just end the class by what is the purpose of cybersecurity or risk management? And I keep emphasizing on its value, and it keeps growing. Everybody, you just gotta put this. We are not protecting things in this class. No, we are implementing security protection and mechanism so we add value to the organization. Final goal is to add value. What value is depends on the organization. As we get into next chapters, we will talk about, as I mentioned earlier, about the foundational things, from identifying what the risk is to assessing the risk to then responding to the risk, which is around the implementation and everything, and then the continuous monitoring after assessment, because you don't just respond and just let it be. No, you have to continue to ensure that you are maintaining the same security posture. All right, class ends right at 9:15. I do not mind hanging around for the next 15 minutes. I don't see any question in the chat, but I can hang around for people who have any questions. But at the same time, feel free to drop. 9:15, the class has ended. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you